Over the last few years, I have become particularly obsessed with Frank Herbert's Dune. Now sure, I can't lie, this obsession certainly stems from the fact that there is a forthcoming film directed by the
Denis Villeneuve.
The upcoming movie has everything a Dune fan could ask for. A ridiculously big budget, phenomenal actors, and a director who knows what the hell he is doing. Despite the excitement surrounding the new movie, Dune has had a rather turbulent path to the big screen. Turbulent is putting it lightly. Apart from David Lynch's 1984 so-so adaptation, what if I told you there was another version of Dune? What if I told you there was an interpretation that was so weird, so bizarre, that it might have changed cinema forever? Well, if that entices you, please look no further than the unfortunate case of Jodorowsky's Dune. Before we really get started, we need to ask one fundamental question. Who even is Alejandro Jodorowsky? Simply put, Jodorowsky is a weird guy, and while discussing the failed production of his Dune movie, you will probably come to see why. Born in Chile in 1921, the filmmaker experimented with a truly new type of filmmaking, often attempting to simulate the feeling of being high through his films. As a result of this and his incredible imagination, Jodorowsky became an avant-garde icon, beloved by figures such as John Lennon. In recent years, Jodorowsky has been rightfully criticised for some really sketchy shit that occurred during the production of his first film, of which you can definitely read about. In December of 1974, following the ridiculous success of The Holy Mountain, Jodorowsky was asked by French producer Jean-Paul Gibbon what he would like to make next. In a moment of pure spontaneity, Jodorowsky replied, Dune. Yes, as in the Frank Herbert science fiction epic that would go on to inspire Star Wars. That Dune. It's also worth noting that at the time of this decision, Jodorowsky had not actually read Dune. A month later, Gibbon had purchased the film rights and gifted them to the famed Chilean. Following this, Jodorowsky attracted Michael Seydoux, the man responsible for the European distribution rights to The Holy Mountain. With the rights and two producers on board, Jodorowsky began production on what he refers to as the prophet film. I'll let him explain.
I want to create a prophet, to change the young mind of all the world. For me, Dune will be the coming of a god.
Jodorowsky's script for Dune was something else. According to Frank Herbert, who is not one to spare minute details, the script was the length of a phone book. And if everything in the script was shot, the film would have had a runtime of over 14 hours. With the script in place, Jodorowsky began the search for his warriors, those who would put their blood, sweat and tears into this ultimately doomed project. With Dune, Jodorowsky wanted to change cinema. And I know that's a pretty big statement, but when I tell you what he wanted to do, you kind of agree. He was imagining camera angles and sequences that would not be achievable for at least a few more decades. In fact, the opening scene of his Dune film was a continuous long take that took you through the galaxy of Dune. It would have been entirely continuous, flying past random planets, pirate ships, all of which were made with miniatures. While the length of this sequence remains unknown, it is assumed that the take would have lasted between 3 and 5 minutes. With Dune, Jodorowsky wanted to make a movie that manipulated the effects of LSD for a sober audience. He wanted the movie to transport his viewers and take them to a completely different world. Jodorowsky was not interested in dark colours or black costumes. He wanted every character to feel alive. He wanted the world to feel unique and new. As such, the filmmaker hired Chris Foss, Jean Giraud and H.R. Geiger to create the visual language of Dune. Foss's work on the film can be found through the truly distinctive visuals of the spaceships, decorated with fascinating patterns and colours. Giraud elegantly crafted the film's costume design. Now before I move on, I just want to point out Giraud's costuming here, because it's simply incredible. I mean, if you look at the colours and such, and you compare it to an artist like Jack Kirby with the New Gods and the Eternals, it's so crazy how similar these two distinctly different things actually are. Of course, Giger, who would go on to create the Xenomorph for Ridley Scott, put his obsession with phallic imagery to good use with his designs for Castle Harkonnen, the base of Dune's antagonists. As a result of this, the filmmaker developed the Dune Bible, an Iliad of designs, concepts, and storyboards for the film. In 2019, one of the few complete copies of this Bible actually sold for $42,000 USD. At this point in the timeline, things were going pretty well for Jodorowsky. In addition to the incredible artists on board, the filmmaker had hired Dan O'Bannon, fresh off John Carpenter's low-budget comedy Dark Star, to serve as Dune's visual effects supervisor. With pre-production of Bliss, Jodorowsky began searching for the sound of Dune. The filmmaker contacted Steve O'Rourke, the manager of Pink Floyd. The director outlined his idea for the film to the band and received confirmation that they would provide the movie's score. Yes, you heard that right. Jodorowsky had Pink Floyd attached to write most of the music to his Dune movie. Like, it's fucking bizarre. The filmmaker's impeccable ability to assemble talent was continued in the film's insane cast. Now, when someone says Salvador Dali, one does not really think of the emperor of the entire galaxy. Well, that's exactly what Jodorowsky had in mind when he was prepping for Dune. According to Jodorowsky, the artist wanted $100,000 per hour he was on set. This was a part of Dali's weird quest to become the highest paid man in Hollywood. Jodorowsky, being a cunning and clever filmmaker, agreed to the terms, but organised Dali's shoot so that he was only needed on set for 1 hour. In addition to Dali, the filmmaker wanted Mick Jagger, Udo Kier, David Carradine, and his own son Brontes to join the film's cast. In addition to this incredible list of names, Jodorowsky wanted Orson Welles, yes, Citizen Kane himself, to play Baron Harkonnen, the film's main antagonist. In an attempt to get Welles to sign on to the project, Jodorowsky promised the actor that the chef from his favourite restaurant would be his private cook throughout production.
I will hire the chef of this restaurant and you will eat as here every day. I can say, I do it.
So you're probably asking yourself this. The movie has a director, it has producers, it has a script, it has designers and concept art, it has music, it has actors. How could this not have been made? Anticlimactically, the same way a lot of movies don't get made. Money. By the time pre-production had reached its conclusion, Jodorowsky had already spent $2 million of the initial $9 million budget. In an attempt to get the film going, the budget was up to $15 million, but no one wanted to invest in a 14-hour science fiction film from one of the weirdest directors around. In 1976, 2 years after the rights were acquired for the director, Gibbon had sold them to Dino De Laurentiis, which spawned the 1984 adaptation from David Lynch. Much has been documented regarding Jodorowsky's failed attempt at Dune. Some believe the film would have changed the landscape of cinema forever, inspiring folks like George Lucas to continue down the path of films like THX 1138, instead of opting for something more commercially viable like Star Wars. Jodorowsky's Dune has gone on to inspire countless science fiction films, despite the fact that it never saw the light of day. Most notably Alien, which came from the mind of O'Bannon and H.R. Giger. Despite the mythic potential of Jodorowsky's weird and strange Dune film, the saying "things happen for a reason" certainly comes to mind when I think of the unfortunate case of Jodorowsky's Dune.